Assalamu alaikum. I just wanted to do a short recording with regards to news consumption. Some of us are newsaholics. We're just news junkies. We like to know what's going on in the world all the time. But if you know what the purpose of the news media is and how it functions, if you look at somebody like Neil Postman's Amusing Ourselves to Death, that's a brilliant book that you guys should read if you haven't yet. And he highlights in it how news functions. It's really entertainment. It's not really about keeping you informed in a real true sense of the word. It's really about catching your attention, getting you to click through the article, so that they can basically pay for their advertising space, pay for their space on the internet through advertisement. That's really what news is about. You'll get a really distorted image of what the world is about if you are constantly checking the news. One of the shuyukh made an interesting insight about this when he called it, when he said they call it breaking news for a reason, because it breaks you. Now, there's an article that came out in 2013 in the Guardian newspaper. Funny enough, it's really interesting how these things work. You know, through the very system, the medium that we're criticizing, we get these gems that come out. The title of the article is "News is Bad for You, and Giving Up Reading It Will Make You Happier." And it will. If you just slow your roll, it's enough for you to spend, if you want to just be abreast with what's going on in the world, you don't need any more than 15 minutes total of just keeping up with like what happened in the world, and you just do it in the morning and that's it, and that's really all you need to do. But beyond that, the news cycle, it's just going to break you. Now, the article itself highlights a bunch of things with regards to the news, and let me just read you just a couple of them, but they're really interesting insights. That news misleads, news is irrelevant, news has no explanatory power, news is toxic to your body, news increases cognitive errors, news inhibits thinking, news works like a drug, news wastes time, news makes us passive, and it kills creativity. And I just wanted to pick a couple of those for those who just don't have the time to read the whole article. I recommend, I'm going to put the link down below for those that want to read the whole thing. But with regards to, say, news misleads, they took an example from Nassim Nicholas Taleb, which is a brilliant example to show you how the news works, to misdirect your attention. A car drives over a bridge and the bridge collapses. What does the news media focus on? The car, the person in the car, where he comes from, where he planned to go, how he experienced the crash if he survived. But all that is irrelevant. None of that actually matters. What's relevant? The structural stability of the bridge. That's the underlying risk that has been lurking and could lurk in other bridges. But the car is flashy, it's dramatic, it's a person, it's non-abstract basically, and it's news that's cheap to produce. News leads us to walk around the completely wrong risk, risk map in our heads. So if you think about it, terrorism is overrated. I mean, if you look at the news right now, terrorism is the thing. It's always in the news. It's always about somebody who just lost their mind and just decided to go do something terrible in the world. But chronic stress is underrated. The collapse of the Lehman Brothers is overrated because it's a big flashy event that happened, economically speaking. But fiscal irresponsibility is underrated. What made Lehman Brothers possible to begin with? You know, they say thieves will talk about there's a sucker born every minute. And these are like con artists. They look for these suckers. Astronauts are overrated, whereas nurses are underrated. Nurses are the ones that should have the attention that astronauts get. Yet astronauts are flashy. It's a really interesting thing. News is irrelevant. Out of the approximately 10,000 news stories you've read in the last 12 months, that's on average. That's how many news stories that we read. And this is just an average person. Not to mention some of us who are news junkies will probably go through way more than that. Name one news story, because you consumed it, allowed you to make a better decision about a serious matter affecting your life, your career, or your business. Just give me one. One news story that you read, forget about the last 12 months, just in the past week, because that's just easier for you to remember, or the last couple of weeks. What news story did you read that after you read it, you're like, yes, okay, I'm going to go and change my life now and do something differently or change my decision making? Nothing. You will find nothing. All you've done is consume. It's like junk food for the mind. Really, that's what the news is about. And the point here is that consumption of the news is irrelevant to you, but we find it very difficult to stop consuming the news because we like new flashy things. Things that have substance that will impact our lives over the long term, that's not good enough. We like flashy, just quick. News increases cognitive errors, and this just goes along my alley because, with the brain and cognitive thinking and whatnot. Now here's the bit, and this is really important for you to pay attention to. News feeds, the mother of all cognitive errors, confirmation bias. In the words of Warren Buffett, what the human being is best at doing is interpreting all new information so that their prior conclusions remain intact. News exacerbates this flaw. We become prone to overconfidence, take stupid risks, and misjudge opportunities. It also exacerbates another cognitive error, the story bias. Our brain craves stories that make sense, even if they don't correspond to reality. As any journalist who writes, the market moved because of X or the company went bankrupt because of Y is an idiot. I'm fed up with this cheap way of explaining the world. And it's true. And finally, news inhibits thinking. Thinking requires concentration. Concentration requires uninterrupted time. News pieces are specifically engineered to interrupt you. They're like viruses that steal attention for their own purposes. News makes us shallow thinkers, but it's worse than that. News severely affects memory, and this has to do with short-term and long-term memory. There's one of the theories, it's not completely accepted, but that first information goes through your short-term memory, and then it goes into your long-term memory. But the way the news is constructed, it creates a blockade so that it keeps you always in the short-term memory, working memory span, because it's just quick, flashy bubbles that come up and they leave you hanging, and then you go into the next one. You never really get to exercise this transformation from short-term to long-term, and it impacts your daily thinking and memory function down the road. Now, why am I sharing this right now? One of the biggest criticisms, this is now give you like the Islamic context behind this. One of the biggest criticisms people have for Imam Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, like scholars of his time, was that he never spoke about Jerusalem. During his time, Jerusalem fell to the Crusaders. And if you look throughout Imam al-Ghazali's works, you don't find him talking about Jerusalem at all. Now that got some people thinking, like, what's going on? Why would he talk about? He even went and visited there, and he prayed there on his journey that he took 10 years off from teaching and just went incognito for that time. So he knew exactly what was going on in Jerusalem, yet he never spoke about it. The reason he didn't speak about it is because he asked himself, well, first of all, how is that relevant to my immediate condition right now? And how am I going to, if I just talk about it, what did that accomplish? That's really the question you should ask yourself. If you just talk about stuff, what did it accomplish for you? How did you help out the situation in any way? Instead of talking about, let's say, you can just talk about Gaza all the time, just talk, or you can participate in the non-violent movements that bring awareness to the blockades and actually and do something that's tangible that has an impact on the conditions over there, rather than just continually consuming the news. Some people say, well, like, I want to stay informed. Well, there's a level of, okay, you want to stay informed, and then there's a point beyond which you're just consuming junk news all the time, and it's not adding to your knowledge base at all. Now, Imam al-Ghazali, instead of talking about Jerusalem and the Crusaders and what was going on and telling the Ummah, oh, get up and go and protect and defend and do all of these things, he didn't do that. He instead wrote Ihya Ulum ad-Din, the revivification of the Islamic sciences or the religious sciences or the religious disciplines, however you want to translate it. That's what he wrote. And in it, the reason he wrote it was because, well, he looked at Jerusalem falling to the Crusaders as a symptom of a deeper disease. And the disease that Muslims had was all of the things he talked about in Ihya Ulum ad-Din. Diseases of the heart. Envy, jealousy, covetousness, desires that are being unchecked. I mean, if you look at the context in which Jerusalem fell, you will see that there was a bigger story than just the Crusaders coming in and taking it over. Now, years later, Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi, which, if you watch Kingdom of Heaven, he was praised in it and how he came up and how they portrayed him. Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi, in his biography, you'll see that it was two things that he carried with him. It was the Quran and Ihya Ulum ad-Din. And because of this religious education that Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi got from Ihya Ulum ad-Din that dealt with the deeper diseases that manifested in symptoms like Jerusalem falling, that when he took over Jerusalem, he didn't do what the Crusaders did. If you read some of the accounts, the biography accounts of the Crusaders, some of them were talking about some really horrendous stuff that happened in Jerusalem when it fell, what they did to Muslims that were living there, the blood was flowing in the streets and whatnot. He didn't do that. Just told them, you're all free, I'm not going to do anything to you, you guys can go on about your business however you want to go about. You can live here in safety or you can leave in safety. I'm not going to do anything to you. And that was the education he got. So when it comes to news consumption and things like that, my advice to myself, first of all, because I'm a news junkie, I like the news and I like to keep abreast with everything that's going on, is right now, I'm recording this in Ramadan. In Ramadan, you fast from food and you take a period of time where you abstain from food. Well, throughout my day, I'm making it a practice now, as much as I can, that I limit my consumption of the news to a maximum of 15 to 20 minutes per day. And that's it. Beyond that, not going to check the news channels, not going to check news sources, and the world is not going to collapse if I don't find out about what happened today, if I find out about it tomorrow. It's not going to change anything. Whatever events that took place, they took place. It is what it is. So I don't gain anything by finding out in real time other than some dopamine rush that, oh my God, I found out. And in fact, I lose because you're experiencing a limbic system reaction. Your body is going through all of this emotional turmoil and anxiety, and that actually has an impact on your life. So it's best to just keep that away. Yeah, stay abreast with what's going on, find out what's happening, 15 minutes, and then cut it off. The rest of the time that you spend on reading news articles and things like that, you're better off spending it on reading essays, reading actual books, things that will benefit you in your daily life, things that will benefit your long-term goals, things that will impact your decision making, things like that. That's what you should be spending your time doing. Instead of sitting in front of the computer and just checking the news, why don't you go outside? It's beautiful out here in Vancouver. It's beautiful out here. Just go out for a drive, go out hiking, go do something that will get you to experience the world in a different way than doom and gloom all the time. It's not doom and gloom all the time. You don't want to have that skewed perception. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَالسَّمَاءَ رَفَعَهَا وَوَضَعَ الْمِيزَانَ أَلَّا تَطْغَوْا فِي الْمِيزَانِ. That he raised the heavens and he put down a balance. Everything is in balance on the earth. Just as there is suffering, there is also beauty, and there is people that are having pleasurable experiences, and there is good time, and there's good in the world just as there's bad in the world. There's good and there's evil. Things are balanced out. But if you're reading the news all the time, the only perception you'll end up having of the world is that it's a terrible place. The only perception that you'll have of human beings is that they all suck, to just put it bluntly. Anywho, just quick words of advice. Now I'm going to go and make some pizza for iftar. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.